Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more HOA stories. In this video, an HOA president claims he owns my dead parents' property. I ended up teaching him a lesson. Let's dive right into the video. So, when I was 15 years old, my parents were coming home after just going out to the movies and grabbing some pizza. A simple trip that turned bad because some idiot decided that drinking and then getting in his car was a genius move. From what I remember being told, he ran a red light and crashed right into my parents' car way over the speed limit. They were taken to the hospital, but there was nothing that could be done, and basically out of nowhere I no longer had parents. I did have an older brother who was 22 at the time who basically stepped in to become my legal guardian until I came of age, making it so I could stay in the house of my parents and finish school without needing to go and live with another family. My parents were smart people and had a will for if something happened to them. Even what to do if both of them were to pass away, they were fair people and things got split right down the middle between my brother and me. He had things of his own already and did not really need everything that was left to him. The other car my parents had left to my brother since I didn't have a license, but he saved it for me. Although I was terrified of getting in one, let alone driving for a long time after the accident. He also technically already had a house that he was not using much since he moved back into the family home with me. Once I was 19 years old, he filed the proper paperwork in order to give me full ownership of the house. I really owe a lot to him because I was a dumb teenager who had fallen apart, and despite also losing his parents, he kept it together to support me. I was also going to go to college locally and commute, so I was glad to have the house in my name now. He was going to move back into his house and I could call him if I needed help for anything. He explained to me all the ins and outs I needed to know. Things were okay for a little bit, and then one day I came home from school exhausted. I had a 6 p.m. chemistry class that was just horrible and always left my head spinning. I changed my major away from science the next semester. My front door had a padlock on it and I called my brother in a panic. He was going to drive over, but it would be about an hour, so I could only sit and wait. While I was waiting, a man came up to me and I knew that he was the president of the HOA. He was also entitled and a nasty guy that my mother hated, and I tried to avoid once I owned the property. HOA, what are you doing here? Me, I cannot get in my house. Somebody put a padlock on it. HOA guy, I did that to keep you from squatting here any longer. I ignored it for a while as a favor, but now I really need you to leave. Me, but this is my house, or rather the old property of my late parents. HOA, I know it must be confusing for you, but the HOA owns this house. If you come back tomorrow during the day, we can let you come in to collect your stuff. Honestly, I had no idea what to do or say in this situation. I knew the house was in my name, but this guy was not listening to anything I said. My brother then arrived and I listened as the two of them argued for a while. So it turns out that once my parents died, the HOA tried to pull this same thing only for my brother to shut them down. I guess they realized that he was gone and decided to try and move in again to take away my property. He was refusing to remove the padlock and my brother called the police, who showed up a few minutes later and then separated the two who were still screaming. Brother, this property belongs to my sister. She can show you her ID and proof of paying the bills. The HOA has no right to take the property. HOA, it is not her property. The home belonged to her parents who died and she has been squatting ever since. We have the right to put a lock to keep her out. The police asked to see the deed for the house, which I kept in a lockbox in the house, and he convinced the HOA to unlock the door, since it was illegal to stop me from getting my things from inside, even if it turned out the HOA owned the property. I then got the house deed and showed it to the police, with the HOA president craning his neck, trying to get a good look. Before the police could even say anything, he started claiming that the deed I showed was probably fake and I should be arrested for fraud and making false paperwork. However, it was a real deed and the police at this point knew what the HOA guy was trying to play at. They told the HOA dude off for trying to take advantage of a situation and that the house legally appeared to be mine. If they still doubted that they could take me to court but were not allowed to put a padlock and keep me out of my own home. They did end up trying to take me to court, and my brother told me that they were hoping to scare me enough to just run away and give my house up. They wanted it because it would be a big sale that the HOA would get the money for if they owned the property either legally or due to it being abandoned. They were trying to pull a bluff and we called it. We had a lawyer that helped us a lot when our parents died, who agreed to help us even though it was not his usual area of expertise. He did not like what we told him and he said that the HOA would be idiots to let it get far enough to be put in front of a judge. I guess they really were stupid though, because they did, and all that happened was the judge verified that I owned the property and chastised the HOA for trying to take advantage of a tragedy and prey on a young woman who did not know much about owning a home yet. They were forced to leave me alone by a court order. I have not heard a peep from them since, and I'm now 22 and about to graduate college. I think I studied more about owning a home than I did my actual studies that 1 year. I'm just glad that the HOA is leaving me alone now, and I haven't had too many issues since. Edit, people keep asking how I was able to own a home right out of high school, I suppose in regards to property taxes and stuff, and the main reason was the mortgage for the home had already been paid off, meaning that the biggest expense was taken care of. For the rest, I had money left to me in the will, and I worked part-time, and my brother helped too. It was not always easy, but the bills did get paid, so the HOA could not have argued that the house was not being taken care of. And yeah guys, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to post a comment, like the video, and maybe even subscribe, because I would love to reach 130,000 subscribers. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled Boyfriend Wants to Put My Cat Down. Earlier this week I had to rush one of my kitties to the emergency room. He started to vomit and cry from pain when his belly was touched. I gave him gabapentin, but it wasn't helping. It was also late, so my mom and I took him while my boyfriend was at work. Without hesitation, my mom and I signed approval for CPR and life-saving procedures. The vet told us he had a urinary blockage from bladder crystals, so he got a urinary catheter and IV fluids. A couple days later, I brought him back home, and yesterday I noticed he was still straining to urinate and had urinary incontinence, since I was noticing bloody urine in places it shouldn't be. And by the way, Ripe Stars, just in case some of my animal lovers are concerned about the kitty in the story, I will just give a small spoiler here: no kittens will die in this story. So anyway, since it was still occurring for another 24 hours, I took him back to the emergency vet since it was a holiday. I had asked my boyfriend to come along for assistance since it was a joint decision for us to get the cat. His first words to me were, "It's best we euthanize him, it's for the best." To which I told him no. Kitties with feline lower urinary tract disease, FLUTD, are still able to make a full recovery and live a long normal life given some diet and environmental changes. It's chronic, it's lifelong, he's going to have to keep going to the vet, it's not worth it. I already got the kitty signed up for AKC pet insurance since they're the only ones who cover pre-existing conditions. I told him that I simply didn't want to have the conversation. I'm not changing my stance on this. I told him to have a heart. I do have a heart, and this is the best for him. He's my baby boy, my child. He's not your effing child. Stop treating him like that. And by the way, Ripe Stars, at that point I would stop treating that guy as my boyfriend. Children are the future generations, cats are not sentient. You're his owner, not his parent. And yeah guys, certainly at that point the boyfriend would have deserved a massive slap, no doubt about that. Anyway, I've raised all of my kitties since they were little. I treat them as though they were my own children. It's a chronic illness, euthanasia is the best. Well, by that logic, I have chronic illnesses too. Does that mean I have to be put down? That's a false equivalency. Then I told him to leave because I told him I didn't want to have that conversation, and he said, well, we are going to have it. But no, we aren't. We can just wait for the vet. They're going to say the same thing. Then we cross that bridge when we get to it, otherwise shut the hell up or leave. Well, he shut up and he was dead silent the entire drive. And while we were there, the vet said nothing about putting my cat down. He didn't reblock, and we've got some more meds for him. My boyfriend still refuses to change his stance on it, and to note, this kitty is a little over a year old and otherwise healthy. I don't think it's right for my boyfriend to have a say in this, considering I've taken sole responsibility of all the animals when he moved out. Am I wrong for refusing euthanasia, or is my boyfriend the a-hole here? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments, but I would definitely say OP is not the a-hole, and the boyfriend is certainly a huge a-hole. Edit for context, he originally wanted to take the kittens. We joint adopted 2 when he moved out, but I told him no, as it would be too stressful and they were already bonded to my other kitty. I have 3 cats total and a doggo, as well as a new environment. The real reason is because he essentially abandoned his other cat because she was too feral. I'd gotten my first kitty all of his vaccines to make sure we could take her but not risk illness. She ended up pregnant and we took 2 of her babies. And by the way, I'm fully aware of the possible reoccurring blockages. I already have family support to take care of vet bills and his new diet. Also working to make the house less stressful, and I plan to talk with his primary vet about anti-anxiety meds like amitriptyline, and I used to be on it myself, or prazosin. The little dude is barely a year old, I know he will just be fine. The vet never once suggested euthanasia, that was all the boyfriend. In the comments, OP further explains her first edit and said, "We had split earlier this year, eventually reconciled, but he stayed, moved out of my house. He wanted to take the kittens, I explain in an edit on the post, but I kept them, everything was good in the new relationship until this week." OP then further clarified that she wanted emotional support, not his opinion or financial support. Basically, it was a joint decision to adopt the kitties, it was a joint decision for me to keep them too. I shouldered the responsibility because I did not trust him, considering he tried to get rid of the kitty, the one with FLUTD, before he moved out and abandoning his last cat. Simply put, he does not have an opinion, even if he miraculously decides to help financially. The animals live with me, I take care of them myself, I take them to the vet, I spend time with them, I had merely asked for his emotional support, not his opinion. And the person in the comments said, FLUTD kittens can definitely live happily and long lives. He is probably the type to just get another cat. My cat became 17 and died of old age/thyroid issues. OP responded, "One of the reasons why I refused to let him take the kittens when he moved out, we joint adopted two, was because he basically abandoned his last cat and I purposefully got my first cat all of his feline leukemia vaccines so we could take her in. She ended up pregnant and we took two of her kitties. He would not bring his cat to live with us because she is too feral now. I told him that it would be too stressful for the kitties, which it would be, since they were bonded to me and my other animals and a new environment, but the main reason was because he abandoned his last cat and tried to get rid of my kitty that was just in the ER. And by the way, I'm keeping the kitties with me 100%. A user in the comments said, euthanasia is 1,000,000% humane in a lot of cases, but the fact that the boyfriend here thinks that cats are not sentient is wild. Does he think that any high-functioning animal doesn't have thoughts or emotions? Another person said, the largest majority of times people use sentient in a sentence, they meant to use sapient, but their vocabulary is lacking. Update to the story. My little kitty is doing much better. He is back to his normal happy self and still just as annoyingly cuddly as before. He is currently on a Hills CD prescription diet mixed with plenty of water and he seems to be just fine with it. We go back to the vet later this week to see about some anti-anxiety meds and other things to help enrich and treat my kitty. He is now back to hanging out with the other animals and relaxing. Thank you to everyone for the suggestions for different methods. I've made note of all of them to try them out. By the way, I read every single comment on my last post and while I may not agree with some of them, I do take them into account. And to make the point, I'm not against euthanasia. If my cat's quality of life starts to deteriorate or treatment is ineffective, then most certainly will that be a conversation to be had. However, I primarily had qualms with the now ex about how young my cat is and how he is otherwise healthy. As for the now ex-boyfriend, I tried again to talk to him, but to no avail. I had tried a couple days ago to possibly find some common ground or even compromise, but nothing. He continued refusing to admit his wrongs towards both me and the animals both times. He told me he would try to help with them financially, but he should have been doing that for the last year, not now when he realizes he is losing me. He also resorted to stonewalling, telling me he couldn't do it anymore and how upset he was with me, outside of the gaslighting, calling me a liar and saying how I was manipulative taking my kitty to the vet. Basically, he dumped me and I'm now blocked. When I go back to the vet, I'm going to work to get his name taken off the microchips. I'm not entirely sure if he will turn violent or not, but if he shows up at my door, he will be met with my AR-15. I'm keeping the animals far away from him. And hopefully he stays far away from me. There were plenty more issues with their ex, but those belong on a separate subreddit. It's all uphill from here. Thank you everyone for the kind words and suggestions. Another user in the comments said, I did not see your initial post, but I'm glad that your kitty is doing better and that the trash has taken itself out. Please make sure to change the locks and get a few cameras if possible. My one female kitty had bladder stones and she was partially blocked and required surgery. I won't lie, it wasn't cheap, but I'd do it all again. All went well and she was on C/D for 4 years until she got cancer and we had to say goodbye last spring. Sending you good vibes and headbutts from my girl here. Another person in the comments said, so glad your cat is doing well. As far as microchips go, they are usually associated with an online account where the information is stored, so you can usually update it yourself if you know what company the chip is from. If you don't know what company, you can ask your vet. If your vet doesn't know, just have them write the number down. It's super easy to find out what company a microchip number is from, and some vets just are not tech savvy. Most of the time, vets cannot actually change the info on a microchip. Microchips only can give one piece of information, a unique number. That number has to be searched in a database to pull up the owner's information. It is not within the chip itself. Another user in the comments said, "So glad to hear all of this, especially about the kitty doing better. I know separating from your ex might be stressful, but it honestly sounds like a stress relief more than anything. I'm very glad your kitty could help you at the same time that you were helping him." Almost forgot, if you're not sure of the microchip company, the AAHA microchip database will let you know the phone number and web address of the manufacturer. All you have to do is type in the microchip number and also make sure your veterinarian has the file notated not to give out any information to your ex or let him bring any of your pets into them. Another user said, "Your cat has got your back, leave it to your pets to point out an a-hole who needs to be shown the door." And that is very true. Pets are often smarter than us. Anyway, it may not seem like it now, but it's the best thing to ever happen to you. OP then said, "My dog is usually the best indicator for me, and she has peed a couple times in a girl's car. She ended up calling the cops on me for nothing, but sometimes we make mistakes." And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Neighbor built an illegal fence around my land and got me trespassed from my own property. Is it really that hard to just keep to your own property? If you ask me and the majority of people, the answer would be an obvious yes. If you ask my neighbor, you might get a totally different answer. Anyway, this is a little long, so I'm just going to jump right into it. My neighbor decided out of the blue that he needed to build a fence to separate our two properties. I'm not a fan of fences in general, but what a man chooses to do on his own land is his business. I did not even notice until a couple days after it was built that the fence was actually built on my side of the property line. Now, for most people, myself included, this usually would not be that big of a deal. A few feet or inches does not mean that much in the long run, but in this case there was a huge issue. I had some plants and even sprinkler system that ended up now on his side of the fence. As you could probably imagine, I was angry that now there was a fence in between me and my own property. The plants were actually a small patch of vegetables that I had spent a long time growing and caring for. I now could not get to them and was not happy about this at all. Looking back, I should have said something at this point, but I didn't. Instead though, I jumped the fence to take care of my vegetables and adjust the sprinkler. The way my sprinkler works is that the whole system is attached to a single valve. That valve is now on the other side of the fence, and without it, I have no way to adjust things like turning it off in the winter and when it rains. I say all this to make sure it is clear that this was the worst possible spot a fence could have gone, and it just so happened that while I was dealing with my vegetables and the valve, my neighbor walked outside of his house and saw me. I will save you the non-existent suspense, he was not happy to see me. "Neighbor, what the hell are you doing in my yard?" Me, "The fence is on my property. This is my fence and my damn yard, and you better get the hell out of here before I make you." I could have left and tried talking to him another time, but I just was not having his aggressive attitude. Me, "You built the fence over the line. My vegetables and sprinkler valve are right there. I am standing on what is technically still my property." He cuts me off about every other word I say to yell more and does not seem to care about anything I gotta say. "Neighbor, don't you know how a damn fence works? You better stay the hell off of my land or I swear I'll make sure you have nothing." He ends up pushing me down hard, and before I can react, he goes inside. What I didn't know at the time is that he actually called the police on me. They showed up and saw me on his side of the fence. I tried to explain things to them, but they said that the fence was all they had to go on without a land surveyor, and they removed me from my own property. They warned that if I trespassed again, I would be arrested and neighbor could file charges. I did not want to go to jail for stepping on my own property. I knew that I needed to get the land surveyed, and I wish I had thought of it sooner because the neighbor had already hired somebody weeks before. It turns out he had a friend that worked as a land surveyor and had him lie on the forms where the property lines were in order to get the fence built in the first place. I hired a guy of my own who looked up the old documents and walked the land. He concluded that I was in the right and I sent a petition to the city with his data. Now they had 2 different reports from 2 different surveyors and could not just ignore the problem. They sent a guy of their own to look over the same land for a 3rd and final time. He of course said that I was right and the fence was encroaching over the property line. It took a while for them to get me back the report on the land, but in the end I was right and the city knew that the fence was bogus. The story does not actually end there though, because I was not done with this neighbor. I followed through to make sure that his friend lost his license over his lies and now was out of a job. I also got a restraining order against the neighbor, which meant that he could not even be in his own backyard while I was there tending to my vegetables or adjusting my valves. I'll admit, I took pleasure in going back there when it was not really necessary, just to see him have to go back inside of his house. He knew that I could and would call the cops on him if he stepped a toe out of line. Of course, one big problem still remained, and that was the fact that the fence was still there. Now, the fence was actually a little complicated because not all of it was on my property, in fact only some of it was, so I could not force the neighbor to actually completely remove it. My land, my rules though, so what I did was go and get a chainsaw to take care of business. I destroyed every bit of fence that was considered on my property and not a plank more. I finally had access again to my area without having to constantly hop over a fence and get glared at by my neighbor. He even tried getting me arrested a second time for trespassing, only for the police to read the report I had from the city regarding the situation and letting me go. What was left at the end was him having half of a fence that was not just useless, but horrifically ugly. Neighbor was furious, and I'm sure if it was not for the restraining order, he would have tried to yell or even assault me again. Instead, I got to watch him from his window as he stared at me while I got to destroy his fence. I don't really care what he ends up doing with that fence or if he just builds a new one in the right spot. All that matters to me is that I have access to my property again and neighbor is not able to pull a fast one over on me. Like he said himself, this was my damn yard and I was not going to let anybody push me around on it. And Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I am kind of proud of OP in this story because he absolutely did the right thing and taught this awful neighbor the correct lesson. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.